Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to the Agile World podcast, where we discuss customer experience, employee experience, and transformation in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, a blueprint for creating an experience-led organization, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today, we're going to talk about branding and how it relates to both customer and employee experience. Branding can be a lot of things to your audiences. It's not only how you communicate visually and through words with your customers and employees, but it also encapsulates your mission and values. These values are increasingly important to both consumers and employees, as there is an increasing amount of choices available. A key differentiator for many is the experience they have with your brand, whether that's the customer experience or the employee experience. How experience and branding ties together can have critical impacts on a business. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Frans Mahieu, Global Marketing Director at Kimberly-Clark and a pioneer in employer branding. First, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do at Kimberly-Clark?
Yeah, hi, Craig. I'm the marketing director in HR, the global marketing director, and my responsibility is the employer brand for Kimberly-Clark. And that is as well the brand for our employees as well as externally for potential candidates. We have over 40,000 people working for us, and we attract about 4,000 to 5,000 new people to our organization every year globally. So it's very important for us that we have a clear brand and a clear culture for our employees and potential new employees to our company. And my job has been to set that strategy. What are we as an employer? And also then execute it throughout the world, working closely with our recruiting partners, attracting the right talent to our company.
Well, let's start by talking about the connection between branding, marketing, and customer experience. So how would you define a great customer experience, and what is a brand's role in it?
Well, I think a great customer experience is an experience that delights a customer. Not just meet their expectations, but it should exceed their expectations, or actually like even things they might not expect and say, wow, that was a great experience. And I think nowadays, this is as important as any other marketing things you do. And it should really be part of the whole marketing journey is what is the experience of your customer throughout the process. And we look at it the same way for our employees and for new employees or candidates. What's their experience with Kimberly Clark, and how can we make it the best experience from the first touch point throughout their contact with Kimberly Clark?
And you've done a lot of great work in employer branding. So how about for the audience, can you explain the difference between a corporate brand and an employer brand?
Yeah, that's actually very simple. A corporate brand is really, it's like, who is Kimberly Clark and why should I buy products from them? An employer brand is, who is Kimberly Clark and why should I work for them, or why should I stay working for them? So it's a difference between buying from Kimberly Clark versus working for Kimberly Clark. But a lot of the same values are true, whether it's an employer brand or a corporate brand.
Great. And so at Kimberly Clark, sounds like you created its first employer brand ever. So could you talk a little bit about, what that process was like, and, how you also incorporated, customer experience, tied those things together?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was hired. I was leading a global marketing and communications function for one of our business units, and they tapped me on the shoulder because they felt like we do need to do the same things for our employer brand as how we treat our brands like Huggies and Kleenex. It's the same methodology, and we need to bring that over to HR and apply those same marketing methodologies to the employer brand. So when I started this function, we did not have an employer brand. We did not have a EVP or employee value proposition, which is very similar to what is your employer brand. So we did the same thing you do on a consumer a regular consumer brand. You look at consumer insights. In this case, we did research with our current employees. We did research with external people, external candidates, and we defined what is the Kimberly Clark brand, what are our values, and then also we looked at what is aspirational, where we're not yet, but where we like to be as a brand. And we use those insights to develop a brand and then also reframe the brand from a employee perspective. And I think that's where really the customer experience comes into play. So we did not use HR talk, but we actually used employee language. So really look at it from their experience. And it was really the UX factor that we added to it. And let me give you just an example. So all the things that we offer to employees and new employees, we put it in a so-called people philosophy wheel. And instead of using traditional HR corporate jargon, we made them very friendly for our employees and potential employees. So we talk, for example, when you do onboarding and when people come onto the company new, we call that welcome. All the things we do to help people think about their career and career movements, like individual development plans, new opportunities to move jobs. We call that dream. When we talk about learning and development, we don't call it learning and development. We put it in a bucket that's called grow. How can you grow your development? How can you grow top talent? When we talk about performance management, and the values we have, we do not call it performance management, but we call it win. So what are the things that make us a winning company? What are the targets that we have as a company, and how you as an employee can be part of that winning culture? When we talk about compensation and recognition, we call it celebrate. When we talk about all the work-life balance um, areas that we provide as a company, like fitness classes, days off, working from home, safety, which is very important in our plans, we call it live well. And then we are very strong in terms of giving back to the community and also in terms of sustainability. And we call that give back. So we have a people wheel that talks about welcome, dream, grow, win, celebrate, live well, and give back, that talks about those same things but puts it in the perspective of an employee or potential employee. And so that's just an example of how we reframed all the things we offer in a more friendly format to our employees. Uh,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, so I've heard a recent statistic that says this one was about Starbucks in particular, but saying that a lot of the consumer support for that company is based on how people perceive how they treat their employees. What do you see as? I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of great work. There's a lot of thought that really went into the employee experience and the employee brand. How do you see that connection between, um, do you see that as a strong connection between how customers perceive your brand, and is that part of the value proposition of really creating that great employee brand?
yes, and there are definitely a couple of touch points that you look at as a business, right? Like how it's so valuable. So, if your employees um, perceive a consistent culture and live it. And that's not something you can't create artificially. People really have to be authentic. But when customers see that, and that it is authentic and that is also consistent throughout their touch point with your company. For example, with us, when they talk to our sales reps, or when they're on the line with customer service, or just how we treat returns. It's very important that that's consistent. So that's one thing. It's like, what is this company doing? Also, what are we doing from a sustainability perspective? Like, how are we trying to be a better steward of the planet? It's very important for our consumers. Now, another thing, touch point that's important is they also, um, our employees are one of our biggest referrers of open jobs. So if there's an open job, if they refer a friend or family to this job, that's very powerful. So it means that we actually get better talent because they have already done their own screening, and we rely on referrals from our employees. It's about 30% of our incoming talent. So it's important from that perspective. And I want to give you one more example of why employer branding is important for the company also. We touch about 2 million people, candidates each year. Between over a half million people going to our career site, we have over 700,000 people following us on LinkedIn, close to a half million on Glassdoor. So these are all people that are candidate potential employees that are touching us even before they apply, right? There's 2 million people. And then when they apply, we have about 200,000 people globally that apply for jobs. And only of those 200,000 people, only 5,000 people will get a job. The other 195,000 people don't get a job. But we want to treat them the same, no matter whether they get a job or not, because they will also buy our products. They might go back the next day when they didn't get that job. They might be in the market for Kleenex, for Huggies, or for some, or Depends, for any of our products. And we want to make sure that they feel good about our company, even if they didn't get the job. So we do a lot of things to make sure that that's correct. Since we've looked at our revenues, and we've seen that if we negatively affect the perception of a candidate, and it affects their consumer behavior, their buying behavior of all our products, that's a lifetime value of about $30,000. So per person that's not getting a job, it's very important that, we believe that they leave with a good experience. And but we also believe from an cultural perspective. So we always like to do the right thing. So we like to treat people the right way. People show an interest in your product, and you do the same thing for consumer brands, right? Even if they might not buy you, or you want to make sure that their interaction with your brand is positive. So we have a lifetime value of, if you look at 30,000 people, and if we can affect their behavior better, improve it by 5%, we put actually a $300 million a price tag on that over their lifetime. So it's, from a business perspective, it's very important that we do this right, and it's important for every company.
Yeah, that's a really interesting statistic. I mean, certainly, I've heard a lot about, the cost of employee turnover is, anything up to, 30%, and sometimes even a little bit more of someone's salary. But, that's a really interesting way of looking at things, of the lifetime value of a consumer, particularly for the more, consumer facing brands. So that's really interesting way of looking at things. So,
And
this,
yeah,
yeah.
and correct. So just sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh, sure.
you're I think you're touching another great point. Is like, we can do a great job in recruiting new people, but if we can do a better job in making sure that our employees are happy working for Kimberly Clark or for any organization, that's the best things. And if we have satisfied employees that are doing a great job, we want to keep them. We don't want to lose them. And again, that's why the internal branding is so important too. That our employees see that we are doing the right things. And especially when we now look at centennials and millennials, it's very important that they feel good about the company. Also, what we do in terms of sustainability and community involvement. So we want to make that's why the internal part of employer branding is just as important as the external part, trying to recruit new people. Since I would rather keep all my good people and not lose them to the competition.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a big cost if when we have to fill new jobs.
absolutely.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add it to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely, this is a there's a lot of focus on employee branding, employee experience. Certainly, my firm Cravity, we do a lot of work in the space, and we even started out in the customer experience space, and because of the demand in employee experience, we've really we're putting a sharp focus on that. Do you see this as something that is this a product of unemployment being low right now? Do you see this focus on employee experience going away? Is this a fad, or do you think it's going to continue, even if the economy changes, or things like that?
Uh, well, it's definitely got more attention since there's such a war for talent, and in general, the unemployment rate for professionals with a degree is 2% or less now, I believe. Uh, and then when you look at certain areas like engineering and IT professionals, it is a real war for talent. So we do a lot of things actually specifically for those areas. Where when we opened a new center in Poland for IT, and the same in Bangalore, India, we do completely customized marketing campaigns, branding and attracting people. So there's a very sharp, pinpointed focus too, um, and I think it will continue. And I think. People are understanding the value of retaining employees, and also the cost if you are too slow in filling jobs. So even if the war for talent becomes less in the future, when there are more people available on the job market, I think it will continue, because if you can do a better job in branding, then you can fill open positions quicker. And when you fill an open position in your company, you can do your business right. So there's a huge cost in having open positions that you cannot fill. So from a business perspective, it's just the right thing to do. I think it was just a forgotten part of human resources, frankly speaking, and it's now being fixed. And you see in a lot of companies, they are hiring people from with an with a true marketing background to help them with employer branding.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next question is, I've seen, certainly, I mean, I come from a mix of backgrounds, but certainly I come from a marketing background. Several other people I know that are in, first they got their feet wet with customer experience, came from this marketing background, as opposed to things that may be more traditional, like customer service or other things. It really seems like, in talking here, too, employer branding, employee experience, customer experience, and marketing, all of these things, not only do they require, experience requires a lot of other skills as well, but it definitely requires a communication, and an empathy, I think, that a lot of communicators need to have to be successful. Do you see, as kind of the customer experience profession grows, and employee experience grows as well, do you see the shift from, marketers, changing careers continuing to grow, or where do you think the talent is gonna be coming from, as these are not brand new professions, but they're relatively new.
Yes, and so when I started this role at Kimberly Clark, there were maybe companies hired to 10% of their employee brand advocates or leaders came from marketing, and I would say now it's about 60%. Uh, there's companies that are smaller that cannot afford a dedicated team of employer marketers, and they will do consulting work. They will hire people to help them with it. So people are solving that need in different ways, which is but it's definitely, it will continue. You will see more and more marketers doing employer branding, and it's a fantastic uh, marketing position, because if you really love your company, it's a great thing to be able to sell and market your company every day. And that's one thing that I always advise people. Like, don't do it for something you don't feel good about. It. You got to have a passion. And if you don't have a passion, which is the same for product marketing. If you don't have a passion for your brands and products, um, you are not going to be that successful.
Yeah, yeah. So why do you think a lot of companies struggle to provide great experience, whether it's customer or employee? What are some of the hurdles that get in the way?
Yeah, I think they don't look at it from a customer or employee perspective. That's not their first perspective, and so it sometimes comes as an afterthought. Uh, we map out a customer experience for all our consumer brands as well as for our employee brands. So, for example, on Huggies, we look at a potential customer even before before the mother is pregnant. So when they start thinking about having a baby, it's like, how can we touch them when they know they're going to have a baby? We help them with devices to, like, tools to, like, come up with baby names. We help them with planning the baby shower. So we're trying to touch that consumer even before they need our products, and then of course throughout the process, we help them with our product. But hopefully they, and we do a lot of this now digital. Um, we start building a consumer experience and relationship throughout the process, and that's why you really have to get into the skin of the consumer to understand that. We do the same from an employee branding perspective, or potential for candidate experience. We recently looked at that experience, and what we found out is that we did not. Uh, we had improvement areas for timely communication with potential candidates. We also discovered, or we knew that the day of interview is very important. It's not just it's a very emotional day for that candidate also. So we looked at things, what can we improve to make that day that they come into your office, and or when they're on a video and doing interviews, to make that as positive as possible. And then just simple things in following up with our candidates as quickly as possible, and in a very professional way and consistently. And when we fix things in the candidate experience, it actually we do an annual research survey, and we actually really recently won a so-called Candy Award, and that's all about the candidate experience. So we won a candidate experience award among all the companies here in this was in North America, but it was based on looking at those touch points where we can make a difference and improvements, and we we really made those improvements. So it's a process. It's to look at the customer experience.
Yeah, what are some of the internal hurdles? I mean, I always, working with organizations, it's, when you do just marketing, you're working with a marketing team. If you're working on only technology, generally you're working with IT or something like that. Experience is one of those things that it seems to touch a lot of departments, divisions, so on and so forth, and internally. How do you kind of get around, you know, nobody owns the entire, every single touch point or every single part of the touch point in experience. How do you get around some of those organizational, let's call them silos?
Yeah, that's so I think, and that starts really at the top. When we did our work, we did a tremendous amount of work in terms of stakeholder management. So we made sure that the business, not just HR and not just our HR leaders, but our business unit leaders, our general managers, bought into the concept also, that they bought into what our people strategy is, that they understood why it's so important, and then providing them and also the employees with tools um, to understand what the culture is all about. For example, we introduced new company behaviors, those company behaviors that are most important, and we introduced them by means of engaging tools. So not just, hey, these are our new behaviors. No, but this is, we provided workshops. We provided interactive digital tools that were fun, where they could fill in like, hey, this behavior, this is how I live those behaviors. So by doing these things, people start seeing this is the culture and this is how we're living this culture, and then it becomes much more consistent throughout the company. And we've been very successful as a global company in launching these new cultural aspects throughout the world. And that's one of the nice things to see too, when you see things that you're creating centrally, but in coordination regions, and then you see it in different languages and with their own flavor popping up throughout Asia, throughout Latin America. And that's the same satisfaction as you see when you create a brand that you see take off throughout the world, and you say like, wow, that's cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's what I find so satisfying about employee experience, well, and customer experience, but particularly employee experience is, people work so hard, they work every day, and you're making their lives a little bit better. It's not always saving the world, but it is, if you can make someone's 8-hour job more enjoyable and more beneficial to them and stuff like that, it's really, it's some good work. So I think that's it's a beneficial practice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like whether that person is working in an office and when they leave at whatever time, 6 o'clock, they get into their car, or whether they are working from home and are logging off for the day, you want to make sure that an employee feels like they made an impact, they feel good about themselves, that they're respected, and it's very important. And managers play a key role in that too. So they are the leaders, and that they provide the feedback to employees and support, so that they truly feel that they are respected and are bringing value to the organization. So you want you spend a lot of time at work. You want to make sure you feel good about it. And if you're not feeling good about it, you probably should be looking for another job.
Right, right. Great. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. With marketing, customer experience, employee experience continuing to evolve, what's your advice for someone that wants to keep up and really figure out what area they'd like to go into, or even just learn more if they're getting started?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Like I said earlier, like you have to love what you do or do what you love, right? And so I think you always need to look at categories that you like. Determining who you're going to work for. Since I think you need to have passion in whatever you do as a marketer, especially since as a marketer you are a leader. You're leading your company. You might be leading an research and development group. You might be leading a sales force. When you are presenting your new plans to a large sales force, you got to be passionate about it. If you don't feel, if you are not the champion of your brand, people will feel that immediately. So passion is very important in my mind. In terms of staying relevant, I like to look at other categories and get ideas from other categories. I like to look at trends. We, for example, introduced an engagement vehicle with new candidates that's called the Original Thinkers Quiz. And it's a BuzzFeed quiz that helps them determine what their original thinking style is. And it's a fun quiz and people really like it. But it was borrowed from other BuzzFeed quizzes that we've seen. So it's just an example of looking at other categories, and then I think the other thing is you have to immerse yourself in your target market. I look at centennials and millennials. I'm lucky that I like craft breweries. I like indie rock, so I'm often right with my target audience, but it helps me better understand that target audience since I also follow the same social media because I have the same interests as them. And so that gives me good insight as how the different target audiences communicate, especially now with all the new digital platforms. You got to stay relevant and understand how you can best communicate. So that are just some of the things that I think are important, and just be eager to learn new things, new skills, and there's so much online learning available now, free online learning. So do that, and and things like you guys do, like the books you write about marketing and customer experiences. Read them and pick up a couple of good ideas, and then apply them to your job.
Thanks. Well, and thanks for plugging my book as well. But Frans Mahieu, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with you and what you're doing?
Just I happen to be the only Frans Mahieu in the US, so you put in my name on LinkedIn, and it will pop up and follow me. And yeah, that's probably the best way. Frans Mahieu, Mahieu. There's no other one here.
Wonderful. All right. Well, again, I'd like to thank Frans Mahieu, Global Marketing Director at Kimberly-Clark, for joining the show. To learn more
Thank you,
about,
Greg. Sorry.
absolutely. To learn more about customer and employee experience, I recommend you go to my website at gregkillstrom.com and make sure to check out my latest book, The Center of Experience. More information is available on my website or wherever the book is sold, like Amazon. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Killstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Killstrom. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, from my website at theagile.world or on Amazon or other retailers. Until next week, stay agile.